When it comes to hunting calibers, it's pretty hard to get away from the classics, the 30-06, 300 Win Mag. Well, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorites, the 7mm Remington Magnum. Thanks for coming back and welcome to the channel. Using a 7mm Remington Magnum with a twist rate that can stabilize things like this 160 grain LRX, what do you guys think would be the best bullet weight or bullet for the 7mm Remington Magnum? Something like the super heavy 195 grain EOL, something like the 120 grain Nosler ballistic tip, or is it something that falls in between like 140 grain, 150 grain? Go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. Growing up with the 7 Rem Mag, we used this right here. It's 120 grain Nosler ballistic tip. We've used it on elk and deer, had very good success with it over the last 20-30 years. Lately, I've switched to 140 grain bullet, similar to this one right here. And the reason I did that was it's just a little bit bigger. It's got a little bit better BC, and my gun has that 26-inch barrel with the faster twist rate, so it likes the 140s just a little bit more. But given the modern rifles, modern twist rates, we can get into things like this 160 grain LRX. So what we're going to do for this is everything is going to have a 26-inch barrel, 1 8-inch twist, because we can stabilize these bullets and we can stabilize the older, more traditional styled bullets. So 26-inch barrels, 1 8-inch twist. Let's get into it. Let's see what the numbers say. So go ahead and pause it here if you'd like to, but this is just a giant list of some of the more common bullets that you'll find for hand loading the 7mm cartridges. You have Nosler, there's some Barnes, Hornady, Berger, Sierra. It's just a good list of some of the more common bullets. Obviously, we missed some brands like Spear and those, but we're not going to show every single bullet laid out for this information. What we're going to do is we're going to take some of the best from kind of each grain weight, and we'll take a look and kind of compare those. With these bullets as well, we're looking at a 1 8-inch twist rifle because there are now plenty of factory rifles with the option of a 1 8-inch twist barrel. With that, we're also doing a 26-inch barrel because, let's be honest, if you're not getting a Magnum in a 26-inch barrel, you're not getting the full capability of it. So in the case of a 7mm, get a 708, get a 280 AI, get something that's not a Magnum so you can get that full potential of the cartridge. So the first bullet we have here is a Nosler 120 grain ballistic tip with a G1 BC of 0.417. Now, to be realistic, you could probably push this a little bit faster, but the hand loads that I've got going are 3,450 feet per second, which doesn't give us a whole lot of energy just because the bullet is so light. But because it's going so fast, within normal hunting ranges, we're going to have plenty of velocity to expand. Now, we'll have a chart at the end that's going to compare this side by side with the other bullets, but for now, there's the 120 ballistic. In the 140 grain mark, we're going to be using the Sierra tipped Game King. I personally don't use this bullet just because I can't find it, but it has a little bit better BC than the Nosler ballistic tip. So we're going to go with this, where the BC is a G1 of 0.545. Now, for a 140 grain bullet, that's a really good BC. That, in combination with the velocity we get of 3,275 feet per second, is a really good combination. It's flat, it's accurate, and I've had really good luck with the 140 grain ballistic tips. This is almost a better version of that ballistic tip. For 150 grains, I did the Nosler AccuBond long range. You could also choose the Hornady ELDX. They have the exact same BC. So the numbers here are essentially going to be the same. The only difference is I feel like the ABLR is a better hunting bullet because its expansion is more consistent. So we have that 150 grain with a BC of 0.546, and that velocity that we're going to get is right around 3,220 feet per second. I've gotten a little bit better than this with some loads. Some powders, they worked a little bit slower. So we went with something that's going to give us a pretty average number of 3,220 feet per second. in the 160 grain mark, we went with the 168 ABLR. Now, we did that because the 160 grain CX and the 160 grain LRX are both really good bullets, but the 168 has a better BC and the velocity difference isn't going to be a whole lot. Now, I've shot some 168s before and they were decent, but the velocity that we were able to achieve was 3,103 feet per second. I don't think that's outrageous. That's pretty well within the wheelhouse of a 7 Rem Mag with that 26-inch barrel. Then for the heaviest end, we went with the 175 ABLR. Now, there are heavier bullets like the ELDM and the EOL by Berger, but having used those on game, they're not a game bullet. They are a good target bullet, but for hunting, they're not a great option. So 175 is about the end of hunting bullets in 7mm. And with that ABLR, we have a BC of 0.648. So it's a slight improvement from the 168, but realistically, it's not a whole lot. The difference isn't going to be that drastic. So 175s, it's not that much more of a benefit than going with the 168 because you lose out on a little bit of velocity to gain not very much BC. So realistically, 175 is where we're going to cap it for hunting bullets. So this here has all of the bullets matched up side by side with each other, 120 to 175. And with it, I have listed its max range for expansion. So we're going to set minimum velocity for expansion at 2,000 feet per second. So once it dips below 2,000 feet per second, we're going to say that the bullet might not expand as reliably as we would like. So we're going to set the max range right there. And the green highlights are where that bullet is the best in that category. And then the red is where that bullet's the worst. So looking at the 120 ballistic tip, it is the flattest out to 500 and the fastest to 250 yards. That 150 ABLR isn't the best or the worst really at anything. It's kind of that middle ground. It'll always be good. That 168, same thing. It does good, but it's never the best, but it's not the worst. That 140 Tip Game King is the fastest at 500 yards and is the flattest after 750 yards. That 175, it's the slowest till about 500 yards and it drops the most out to 750 yards. Now, it is going to have the most wind deflection. It is going to be pushed around by the wind the least. However, between the 140 and the 175 with a 15 mile an hour crosswind, it's only like a foot of wind drift. So at 1,000 yards, if you've got the time to sit down and dial and you can guess right around where the wind is, you're not going to see a big difference between the 140 and the 175. Taking a look at the max ranges, obviously that 120 is going to have the shortest maximum range of 622 yards. The 140 has a max range of 758. The 150, 712. 168, 755. And then the 175 is 784 yards. So realistically, going from 140 grains to 175 grains, you don't add very much of a maximum range. You add 70 yards. So let's be honest here. Going past that 140 to 150 grain mark in the 7 Rem Mag doesn't make that much of a difference. You're not really any flatter going heavier. You're not helping with expansion at longer ranges in a meaningful amount. And let's look at it this way. Most people won't be hunting past 500 yards. And if you're not hunting past 500 yards, it doesn't matter what your 1,000-yard mark looks like. But just for argument's sake, that 140 is still flatter than that 175 grain bullet. So if you're going to shoot a 7 Rem Mag, I would go with something in that 140 to 150 grain mark. You're going to have less recoil. You're going to have better velocities within normal hunting ranges. And your drop isn't going to be that much different than a 175. If you care more about energy, well, no duh, the heavier bullets are going to carry more energy. So feel free to use that. But realistically, the difference between 140 grain and 175 grain isn't that much. Those bullets, I almost want to say they're heavy just to be heavy. They're heavy to give energy. They're not, the benefits really not there. So, in my opinion, 140 grain and 150 grain is the ideal weight for a 7 Rem mag. And if you want to see any of these bullets get tested or any of the bullets I mentioned in my video, go ahead and drop a comment and we'll see what we can get done. Thanks for watching.